For a long time, one sound could make people think of trains instantly. Ta-ta, ta-ta, ta-ta. It felt like the natural voice of a railway, but that rhythm was not really coming from the engine. It came from wheels crossing tiny gaps between one rail and the next. Each gap gave the carriage a small jolt, turning steel into a beat. The strange part is that those gaps were once considered necessary. Steel expands when it gets hot and shrinks when it gets cold. So if engineers welded rails into one long, unbroken line, wouldn't the track bend under the summer sun? To understand why that question mattered, we have to go back to when rails were built from separate pieces of steel. Let's get into it right here on Secrets of Simple Things. When rails were separate steel bars. Early railroads did not have endless rails. Steel mills produced shorter sections, often around 12 meters long. Out on the track, workers joined them with metal plates and bolts. It was practical. It was also noisy. Between each rail section, a small gap remained. When a wheel crossed it, the track took a tiny hit. Wheel, gap, impact. Wheel, gap, impact. That is where the old railway rhythm came from. To passengers, it became part of the romance of train travel. To engineers, it meant wear. Every joint made the track flex slightly. The train rocked more. Wheels wore down faster. Vibrations traveled through the rails, and the bolted joints needed regular inspection. The sound was charming only from a distance. Up close, it was maintenance. So the dream was simple. Remove the gaps. Let wheels roll across long, smooth steel instead of thousands of little interruptions. But for decades, that dream sounded dangerous. Why welding rails once sounded like trouble. Railroads spend their entire lives outside. They sit in heat, cold, rain, frost, and direct sunlight. Steel may look still, but it is always responding to temperature. When it gets cold, it contracts. When it gets hot, it expands. A 12-meter rail can grow by about 6 millimeters when its temperature rises by 40 degrees Celsius. 6 millimeters is not much in your hand. Across kilometers of welded track, it begins to sound like a problem looking for a place to escape. If the rail had no room to grow, people feared it would push sideways, buckle, and create the worst kind of railway failure, a derailment. So those gaps were not sloppy construction. They were breathing room. A little space left for the metal to survive the weather. This is why the first serious interest came from a smaller world. Tram rails. City tram tracks were lighter, carried lower forces, and made their clacking noise in the middle of streets. They were a safer place to ask, could the gaps disappear? To make that possible, engineers needed a way to join heavy rails out in the field. Thermite, a small furnace on the track. That is where thermite entered the story. Thermite is a reaction between a metal oxide and aluminum powder. When it ignites, it can produce molten metal at extreme temperatures. For rail welding, that means workers can make liquid steel exactly where the track needs to be joined. No steel mill beside the railway, no giant machine carrying rails away, just a prepared gap, a mold, and a reaction hot enough to pour new steel between two rail ends. The light is intense. Molten steel forms together with molten aluminum oxide, or slag. Because steel is denser, it flows down into the mold first. The lighter slag rises and is guided away, so it does not become trapped inside the weld. But the spectacle is only the surface. The real value is practical. Thermite creates liquid steel at the one place where liquid steel is needed. When that steel fills the gap and cools, two separate rails can become one continuous piece. Still, a rail weld cannot simply stick. It has to be straight, smooth, and strong enough for millions of wheels. A good weld starts before the fire. A strong rail weld begins with control. Workers first think about the rail's neutral temperature, the point where the rail is neither being pulled apart nor squeezed together. Below that point, the rail tends to contract and enters tension. Above it, the rail wants to expand and enters compression. Then they cut a gap, usually around 2.5 centimeters, so molten steel has somewhere to flow. The two rail ends must be aligned vertically, horizontally, and checked for twisting. A tiny error here can become a bump that every wheel feels later. There is also a detail that sounds wrong until you understand it. The rail ends are set slightly upward near the weld. Molten steel shrinks as it cools, pulling the sides inward. If the rails begin perfectly flat, the finished track may not end flat. The mold around the gap has to be sealed tightly. Liquid steel can flow almost like water, except it is far heavier and far less forgiving. Before the pour, workers preheat the mold and rail ends. That drives away moisture and stops the new steel from cooling too quickly. Rapid cooling can make steel hard but brittle. A rail does not just need hardness, it needs toughness. After the pour, extra metal is cut away and the surface is ground until the joint nearly disappears beneath a passing wheel. A weld that has to prove itself. A smooth-looking weld is not enough. Rail welds are tested because the track has no room for wishful thinking. In bending tests, welded sections are pushed until they fail. In one test, a section did not snap until the load passed 150 tons. The surprising part is where the break often happens. It is not always the new Thermite steel in the middle. The weak point can be the heat-affected zone beside it. Original rail that did not melt, but became hot enough for its internal structure to change. That detail matters. A good weld is not only about the metal added into the gap, it is also about what heat does to the old steel around it. Around the world, millions of thermite welds are made each year. Each one adds only a few centimeters of steel. Together, those tiny pores become kilometers of continuous railway. And now the original question returns. Once the gaps are gone, where does all that expansion go? The trick: the rail does not have to get longer. Most of us picture thermal expansion in the simplest way. Heat something, and it gets bigger. True, but length can change in another way too. Pull a piece of steel, and it stretches slightly. Push it from both ends, and it compresses slightly. As long as the force stays within the elastic range, the steel is not permanently damaged. It stores stress. Continuous welded rail uses that idea. When temperature rises, the rail wants to grow longer, but it is not lying freely on the ground. It is fastened to sleepers, and those sleepers are locked in place by ballast. The whole track structure resists the rail's attempt to slide forward like a loose strip of metal. So the rail does not simply stretch down the line, it builds compressive stress inside itself. Imagine holding a metal ruler between your two hands. If the ruler tried to grow longer, but your hands refused to move, the urge to expand would turn into pressure against your palms. The track is doing the same thing, just on a much larger scale. In hot weather, the rail goes into compression. In cold weather, it wants to shrink, so it goes into tension. Expansion and contraction are still happening, but they are being translated into stress instead of obvious movement. The secret of continuous rail is not that steel stopped expanding in the heat. The secret is that it is no longer allowed to expand freely. Why neutral temperature matters. This is why rail is not welded at any random moment. Continuous track is designed around a neutral temperature. At that point, the rail is close to relaxed. Warmer than that, compressive stress rises. Colder than that, tensile stress rises. The goal is not to remove stress forever. The goal is to know what kind of stress the rail will carry, and when. In many places, railroads prefer a relatively high neutral temperature. Cold weather can still crack a rail by pulling it into tension, but a crack is often easier to detect. especially with electrical monitoring systems that notice a break in continuity. A buckle is different. If heat pushes the track sideways, danger can arrive quickly. A train does not need a huge distortion in the rail to be in serious trouble, so the system is designed around the failure engineers most want to avoid. Stress is accepted, but it must stay inside a planned range. When that works, continuous rail becomes safer, smoother, and easier to maintain. How continuous rail changed the ride. Fewer joints mean fewer impacts. Instead of hitting gap after gap, train wheels roll across long stretches of steel. The ride feels steadier. The track vibrates less. Wheels take less punishment. Maintenance drops because many old weak points have disappeared. This is one reason modern trains can run faster and more comfortably. The path under the wheels has become less broken. What disappears is the old rhythm. Ta-tak, ta-tak, ta-tak. What replaces it is quieter, smoother, and more engineered than it looks. The silence is not emptiness. It is the sound of a problem being solved. A rail is not just a piece of steel. From the outside, a railway track looks almost too simple. Two steel lines running across the ground. But hidden inside that simplicity is a chain of ideas. Chemistry creates liquid steel on demand. Careful alignment turns that steel into a smooth joint. Metallurgy decides whether cooling metal becomes tough or brittle. Physics lets the rail carry thermal expansion as stress instead of uncontrolled movement. The old ta-tak sound used to remind us that rails were made from separate pieces. Modern tracks are quieter because engineers learned how to join those pieces without letting heat tear the system apart. So the next time you sit on a train that feels almost too smooth, remember, beneath you is not just steel, it is a quiet negotiation between heat, force, and human design. If you enjoyed discovering the hidden engineering behind something as ordinary as a railway track, subscribe to Secrets of Simple Things. Because sometimes the simplest things around us are only simple because someone solved a very complicated problem first.